Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day life. Let's start with the video.
Tristan and I were watching a movie when the doorbell rang. We checked the time and it was almost midnight. We were not expecting any guests, so it was fairly odd to have someone at our door this late at night. However, Tristan got out of bed, got into his slippers, and headed for the front door. When he didn't come back after 5 minutes, I followed him to the main entrance, and I was taken aback when I saw my mother-in-law in her nightgown dragging a suitcase with her while my husband helped her to bring the other 3 inside the house. Chris, my 59-year-old mother-in-law, didn't look very well. She had swollen eyes as if she cried all her way down here. Her clothes and hair were a mess, and her body looked extremely weak. After taking a good look at Chris, I asked her, "Are you okay? You don't look very fine." It seemed like she was not welcoming any questions, therefore she just requested to be taken to her bedroom so she can rest. When Tristan and I went to bed again, I discussed my concerns with him. He was also worried about his mom, but considered waiting for her to talk first better. He didn't want to press any questions onto her that she didn't want to answer, but I wanted to do otherwise. The following morning, after my husband was gone to work, I made breakfast for my mother-in-law and took the tray to her bedroom. She was awake, or maybe she didn't sleep at all. Anyhow, she was sitting on the side of the bed, lost in her deep thoughts. I wished her good morning. She looked up to find me and her breakfast in my hand. She didn't respond to me at all and just looked at me with her anxious eyes. I told her to have breakfast and step down so she can get some fresh air. But when she ignored me, I placed the tray at her nightstand and left her in the room again. I couldn't understand why she was behaving this way because she is the most loving and warm-hearted person I've ever met. She used to be so full of life, but now it's all gone. Days went by, but she didn't leave her bedroom. She rarely ate the food I left for her on the nightstand and didn't speak to either me or my husband throughout the course of the 3 days. It seemed like she got used to isolation and didn't want anyone around her. One evening, when Tristan came back from work, we were just hanging out in the living room when Chris came down from her prison and sat in front of us on the other couch. Tristan asked her, "How are you feeling now, Mom?" I was not expecting any response from her, but I was taken aback when I heard her say, "I'm okay, honey." I was surprised yet happy to have her back. I couldn't tolerate seeing her suffering all by herself. I wanted to make things right, but I couldn't, because I didn't even know what she was going through. I then continued the conversation with, "You don't look okay, Chris. What happened at Janice's?" Chris has been living with her other son Robert and his wife Janice for more than 6 months because they both loved her dearly and wanted her around them all the time. Or it seemed so. Update 1. "I'm terrified. I don't want to lose my son," said Chris. Tristan and I looked at each other puzzled, not knowing where the conversation was headed. She continued, "Janice was not very fond of me since day 1, and at last she succeeded in throwing me out of my son's life. When Robert asked me to live with him, I was over the moon because I couldn't have asked for more. I felt needed and loved, and I wanted to make him and his wife feel the same. I gave them space, cooked for them almost every day, helped Janice with the chores, and stood by her bed all night when she was pregnant and not feeling well. But that didn't change Janice's heart for me. Her hatred for me never died down. One day, when Robert wasn't home, Janice came to me. She was disgusted to even look at me. She commanded me to leave the house and let them live their life. I protested by saying, 'But I never meant to harm you or Robert. I'm just staying with you because my son wants me to.' She didn't like my answer, so she threatened to ruin my relationship with Robert. At first, I thought she was just bluffing, but it didn't turn out that way. The next day, when Robert and Janice were getting ready to go to a party together, I heard her shouting, 'I put it here, and I don't know where it went.' I rushed to their bedroom and inquired what was wrong. Robert told me that his wife's wedding ring is missing. I reassured them, 'Don't worry, it must be here somewhere, we'll find it,' and hence we all started looking for the ring around the house. Minutes went by, but none of us found it until Janice started yelling, "Robert, come here quickly!" Relief spread over me since I thought she found the ring, but that was not the case. When I followed Janice's voice, I ended up in my bedroom, where she was standing with her ring in her hand and my things all over the place. She looked up to find me and said to Robert, "Your mom stole my ring." I was confused about how that ring ended up in my bedroom. I protested. "I didn't steal that ring. I've no reason to do so." But all those words were meaningless since Janice had the proof in her hand that portrayed a different story. I felt so helpless and nauseous at that moment that I wanted to hide under the earth. I couldn't bear looking into my son's eyes, which were filled with suspicion and disgust. He took a minute before he spoke, grief-ridden. "Mom, why would you do such a thing? This was the last thing I wanted to happen. I couldn't tolerate my son accusing me of theft." He left without hearing an answer, leaving me alone with his wife. She came closer to me and said, "I told you to leave the house, but you didn't consider my order. This is what you get for disobeying me." I couldn't believe she set me up just to throw me out of the house. What did I ever do wrong to her? I just couldn't take it anymore. Once they both left the house to attend the party they'd been invited to, I took out my bags and packed everything I had. I didn't want to stay under the same roof as that bee. I hope she pays for her sins. I took my bags out and headed for the door. It was quite dark outside and not a single person was in sight. I stood there for more than an hour before a taxi stopped by. I didn't know where I was headed, but I just couldn't stay at that place. Update 2. Tristan asked, "I'm glad you chose to come to me. I'll take good care of you." And he looked at me. So I also assured Chris, "Yes, I promise I will never do anything to hurt you as Janice did." Although our words didn't ease her mind, she still managed to smile at us in appreciation of our thoughtfulness. At that moment, I pledged to myself that I will not let Janice get away with it. I'll surely make her pay for her wrongdoings. So I suggested a plan to both mother and son. It wasn't the most mature thing to do, but we had to do what we had to do. After a week, Chris went back to Janice's in the morning so she could find her all alone at home in order to talk things out with her. When Janice opened the door, she looked quite displeased to see her guest. However, she let her in so they can talk in private rather than making a scene in the neighborhood. Chris confronted her. "Why did you do something like that to me? I never stole your ring." A devilish grin spread over her mouth since she was satisfied with the result of her offense. She then said, "I never intended to do it, Chris, but you forced me to." Chris tried to remain calm and keep her composure. "But why would you want me out of your house? I never did anything wrong with you." She snapped back, "Because I hate you, Chris. I don't want you in my house. I don't want to share you with my husband." That was all she had to hear. She didn't respond to any curse Janice threw at her and just left the house to avoid any mishap. She couldn't take in more. Update 3. Robert was sent a copy of the recording of the conversation that happened the other day between Chris and Janice. He immediately called his mother and apologized for his rude behavior and believed his wife over her mother. Chris couldn't let go of the pain and suffering that he caused, yet she decided to forgive Robert. However, she declared that she would not be going back to his place and rather be staying with Tristan and me. I had the time of my life with Chris. We used to go shopping, cook together, and do our girly chats. I wouldn't trade her for anything. I'm glad she chose us over Robert and Janice. I will treasure her like she deserved to be treasured. Nowadays, people have no empathy left. They would stoop as low as they can to harm others. I too had a similar experience, except it was my mother-in-law who wanted to push me through the stairs while I was pregnant so she could get rid of me and my baby altogether. I don't think I can forgive her for that. My husband and I later moved to another country, hence I've not seen her since then, which I'm extremely grateful for. You're a real survivor. I'm glad you and your baby are healthy and happy now. I agree that people have lost their values and principles. We're living in a world where one's wishes are prioritized over someone's welfare. It's a sad reality. I am thrilled about the fact that you took revenge on Janice. She really deserved it. However, I wonder what happened to her after her little secret was exposed in front of Robert. I'm sure no one would want to be married to a liar who would go so low as to get his mother out of his house. Regardless, kudos to both Tristan and you for welcoming your mother with open arms and letting her stay with you. You are the real heroes here. Hats off. Here's the next story. So this is a pretty simple one, I think. My wife 39F and I 39M are going through an admittedly pretty messy divorce. I thought everything was fine with our relationship until my son 14M told me that he walked in on her cheating on me with our next door neighbor's son, 20-ish I think. It's been going on for a year now. Obviously, I do the expected thing and move out and file for divorce, since she'll probably end up with the house. The thing is, my son wanted to come with me. I made him stay with her till I got a place lined up, but ever since he's been living with me and is refusing to spend time with her or even speak to her. The entire time I've been supportive of this. She's scum as far as I'm concerned, and I don't see why I should try to convince him otherwise. Custody came up in the divorce. We're both requesting primary, and when it came to asking my son what he wanted, he said that he didn't want anything to do with my wife. Ever since then, my wife has been plastering all over social media that I've been poisoning him against her, which is causing a lot of other family members and others I know to get on my ass about it. While I wouldn't say that I've been poisoning him, I haven't exactly been trying to get him to think better of her, which is what some of my family members and friends are angry at me for doing. My sister especially has been on my ass about it. She tells me that I should be telling my son off whenever he expresses how he feels about his mother, and that I should be encouraging him to sort things out with her and to see things from her perspective. While I understand that this is something that would help him get some form of relationship back with her, I honestly don't see how it's my place to do that. My wife cheated on me for a college kid and threw me and our son away for it. I don't get why I should be helping her to get away with this regarding our son and his feelings about the situation. My sister and everyone else I've shared my thoughts with are calling me a major a-hole for it. I'd like to see if others who don't know either of us agree with them, or whether or not it's just a microcosm of our social group and family. So, am I the a-hole? Edit. Hey, so I didn't expect this post to be as big as it is. It'll take much more time to read through all the comments left, but I promise that I will. What's the point of asking for opinions if I don't read them, right? Anyhow, I noticed that a lot of you are very pushy on the therapy thing. After reading everything, I will reevaluate that and try to encourage my son about going there. But again, I will not force him to go there. I refuse to take his agency away from him, and I don't think that the circumstances are serious enough to force him to receive psychiatric help. Others have said that they fear the way my son speaks about his mother, and me letting him do so will cause him to become misogynistic. I don't believe this. As I've said, he is a pretty aware and considerate kid. He calls me up on things all the time. He's only talking like he is because he's frustrated and doesn't really have the language to get out what he's trying to say. But in the future, I will speak to him about a certain language he is using. Again, though, he isn't the type to end up misogynistic. Lastly, a lot of people have encouraged me to tell him that he doesn't need to pick a side and that I don't have any issues with him having a relationship with his mother. This is something I've already expressed, though I haven't said it in those words. I'll make sure to reiterate, as it stands, he is very open about not wanting a relationship with his mother, and like therapy, I'm not going to force him. It's his choice. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for leaving their comments. I felt like I was reading a post made by my family member because I am experiencing the exact same situation from your son's POV. Not the a-hole, he's old enough to form his own opinions and make up his mind. My advice would be to not discuss it unless he wants to talk about the situation, because if you continuously bring it up, your family members and ex-wife will claim to be justified in you poisoning him. Not the a-hole. Your son witnessed your wife cheating. He's old enough to make up his mind at his age. However, he's not mature enough to realize he may want contact when he's older. My suggestion is you don't talk to him about your ex-wife in a derogatory way. Hard, I know, and be there if he needs to talk. Your sister is the a-hole for advising you to tell him off. That's crazy. Your son is not only having the usual teen boy troubles, but dealing with his parents divorcing too. Give him time and be there for him. I wish you both well. Next story. My fiancé and I have been together for almost 6 years now, and while we don't have any children, we do have a cat, a dog, a home, 2 vehicles, and loads of expenses. I became unemployed last month after getting into a car accident and needing surgery recovery time, and my employer being unwilling to wait 6 weeks for my return. I currently receive unemployment of $120 a week and have 3 job interviews coming up next week, as I'm practically at my 6-week post-surgery mark and can start working again. He has been unemployed for 3 months due to mental health. Mental health, in my opinion, being he just doesn't want to work. Not to discredit his mental health, but I'm telling you right now that I am with this man 24/7, and the stress mental health he is talking about is not present in the slightest. Guys are always happy and overly happy to spend money. He spends more now that he isn't employed than he did when he was employed. All of our bills are covered, and this is not the issue. The issue is he just spent almost $2,000 in 4 days and has no effing idea where the money went. So basically, we went to stay with my mother in PA for 2 weeks for my cousin's wedding and my grandfather's funeral. I hated my grandfather for reasons I cannot mention. As heartless as it sounds, I didn't care about his passing or his funeral, but it gave me time to catch up with family. 5 days ago, we had roughly $2,300 in the bank. He has the app on his phone. I do not. Therefore, I do not have text alerts or email notifications on balances like he does. Today, I asked to see his phone to check the bank, and we are down to $280. I haven't touched the effing bank card. I have my unemployment card that I have been using because I hardly ever make purchases, and he, on the other hand, goes to a gas station 6 times a day and buys God only knows what. So I flipped out. I asked what he spent all the money on, and he got defensive and was like, "There's no effing way I blew through that much money," and tried blaming PA's prices. We live in NH, so prices are cheap. I told him at this point that his mental health break is over and he is to get a job immediately to recoup what he spent on useless shiz, and have contacted the bank for a full statement. He says I am an a-hole for not seeing that he obviously didn't intend to spend this much money and it was an honest mistake and I am pushing this too far. Am I the a-hole? Again, money is not the issue. We have always saved and been well ahead of our bills and expenses and usually pay up months in advance. We don't even owe rent until the beginning of July. This is why I could very well be the a-hole here. Edited to add. Quick edit, as many have mentioned this, the bank app we have does not show transaction history. The bank tries claiming it is due to security, so I can see when money is loaded into the bank, but I cannot see when money is being used or what it is being used on from the app itself. I do not have access to the app due to it being a joint checking account, and the bank pings it as fraud when I try logging in through my phone, claiming it to be suspicious activity. Edited to add again, this is a joint bills account. We both have savings accounts. He does not have access to my savings, and I do not have access to his savings. He claimed he forgot to withdraw money from his savings prior to making this trip and was using the joint bill checking account for this trip.